the central feature of what was revealed in the most recent Twitter files and in the testimony of Matt and Michael to the House was the massive network of collusion between various pieces of our security state and the tech platforms to suppress various viewpoints. And I was particularly struck to see a discussion, in the Congress by Matt of misdis and malinformation. Right? Misdis and malinformation is something you and I have been trying to raise the alarm about since episode 115 back in February of 2022. And the context is nothing if not alarming. And I was a little bit shocked to see that the full weight of it actually had not yet become visible in the context of the Twitter file. So misdis and malinformation, you will all remember, are three categories that were seen together, I think for the first time, on February 7th of 2022.
You want to show my screen?
Yeah, let's show your screen if I can remember how to do that.
So
Hey.
this is a bulletin from the Department of Homeland Security from exactly as you said, February 7th, 2022. And we showed exactly this as well in episode 115 in February of 2022, stating that they have issued a National Terrorism Advisory System bulletin, suggesting, and as to why they are doing that, because there are continuing threats against the homeland, apparently, right? And I'm not, you may have to undo my screen in order for me to get to the right place to show, but you were about to define the terms, but I think we can also get there directly if you want to start defining misdis and malinformation as I...
Yes, you will all, those of you who watched episode 115 will be reminded that misinformation is information that is incorrect, but accidentally.
It's the Department of Homeland Security site, which we were just on, the bulletin from February 7th, 2022, links to a misdis and malinformation site here, exactly this, and we'll put this in the show notes, which is at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency branch of the federal government of the United States. And here they have terms to know. Some tactics of foreign influence, they specify here, include leveraging misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. Definitions for each are below. Should we just read these, or you want to define them?
Well, I'm a little concerned because I know that some of their sites, they have modified these definitions, perhaps in part because we called attention to what they were up to.
These have actually remained the same.
They have remained the same. Okay.
Even though this site looks very different. And it appears to be living in a different place. You can't get there the same way you could get there 13 months ago. But the definitions that they have used here are the same ones that we shared in February of 2022.
All right.
So misinformation is false, but not created or shared with the intention of causing harm. Disinformation is deliberately created to mislead, harm, or manipulate a person, social group, organization, or country. And malinformation is based on fact, but used out of context to mislead, harm, or manipulate. An example of malinformation is editing a video to remove important context to harm or mislead. So that is one sentence that I don't think was in the original.
Yeah, I don't think it was in the original. And there's been a lot of skullduggery behind the scenes, including the deleting of what amounts to evidence of this extra constitutional behavior on the part of the Department of Homeland Security. But the upshot is this.
Before we get to the upshot, because that is the final bit here, can we just spend some time talking about the misdis and malinformation?
Yes, I want to go through the taxonomy. Misinformation.
One of the things that we said in the episode, and we'll share actually the clip that I think, the 25-minute clip in which we talked about it a year ago, is that actually in education, and when you teach, at least if you are teaching well, if you are actually trying to get your students to be able to go out into the world and assess what is true and what is not, and have a response when people are trying to manipulate them, is that you provide to them forms of misdis and malinformation in order to allow them to learn how to recognize it when it comes at them.
Yeah, I would say it differently. I would say they have gone out of their way to formalize things as if they are a threat that are actually a normal part of various kinds of discourse, comedy, teaching, etc. Misinformation, errors. Disinformation, intentional errors. Malinformation, things that are not in error, but that might lead to the distrust of the government, distrust of things like vaccine safety. Now, there are two parts to this. Yeah. There are two parts to the problem here. And one of them was clearly outlined in the hearings by Michael and Matt. That is the draconian nature of these definitions with respect to a systematic campaign of propaganda and censorship, right? Mm-hmm. They fully recognize the horror of your government defining things like information that is based in fact but causes distrust of the government entities themselves. To declare that worthy of some sort of control is A, unconstitutional, mm-hmm. and B, very troubling because it is part and parcel of propaganda and censorship, which are at the core of tyrannical state power. What they did not say.
So we do have a few more things to say about this. So if you
want to go ahead.
Okay. One of the things that we talked about a year ago, but did not actually share a link to, and we're going to this time share a link. This is you can actually show my screen again. This is a PDF from the same cluster of sites, of government sites, in which they give advice to organizations or people who might want to control dis, and malinformation. And they call this the Rumor Control Page Startup Guide. And we did talk about this some a year ago, but they, again, have dis, and malinformation defined, this time with handy little infographics in which the bullhorn is spreading out true things that the government wishes would not be said, and that is malinformation. And if you come down and try to learn what is it, what should you do, what does the government want you to do if you think that you have determined that there is some dis, or malinformation out there, well, here, how do you communicate effectively on a rumor control page? Remember, the government thinks that rumor control pages are good because rumors in this taxonomy are bad things, errors, intentional errors, or things that the government doesn't want you talking about or knowing. You could preemptively debunk or pre-bunk was the phrase that we found amusing a year ago, because what are they talking about? Lead with the truth, not the rumor. Keep it simple. Hey, they've got a light bulb. Look at that. And be consistent in the types of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation narratives and activities that you debunk. Don't be too much of a generalist. Stay in your lane. So.
Wait, go back.
Yeah.
I would just want to point out that lead with the truth doesn't mean lead with the truth. It means lead with that fraction of the truth that does not cause distrust of the government.
Right.
Now, I just want to point out, as a patriotic American, how unpatriotic this is. Mm-hmm. This is a violation of arguably the most central principle at the heart of the free West, the ability to discuss that which is true, especially when it involves things that cause the government to be untrustworthy and therefore need to be corrected through the natural mechanisms of democracy.
So I will say, you said, I want to point out as a patriotic American just how unpatriotic this is. I would also like to point out as a scientific American just how unscientific this is, okay? And Scientific American doesn't mean anything in particular, except it used to be a popular science magazine of some repute, but has since fallen into the ideological rabbit hole. But this is the opposite of how one understands the world scientifically, because, okay, government, define truth. Oh, wait, no, please don't, because you keep on getting it wrong. And science does, right? Like science is a process by which we constantly refine our understanding and hopefully get closer and closer and closer to a true understanding of what is actually going on in the universe. And on balance, over time, if you take the long time horizon, we certainly do get there. But any given change may have actually moved us backwards. You can't know in the moment. And we have seen in the last 3 years of this unending, fear-mongering SARS-CoV-2 landscape that we live in now and will forever probably, that when the government changes its opinions as to what is true or what is the right policy or what it is that you're allowed to talk about, they always kind of vaguely wave their arms and say, well, of course, the science has changed. And in no case so far that I have seen them do this and that we have talked about this, have we found or have they supplied any evidence that the science just changed? And of course, the science change isn't what they mean. What they're suggesting is that the scientific evidence is now pointing in a different direction, which would be fantastic if that was actually what was going on. But in fact, either they have lost control of the narrative and they have to admit something they didn't want to admit before, or they are simply changing up what it is that they want you to believe now. And in neither that case nor the former case are they actually going to provide any evidence because you know you wouldn't understand or something like that.
Yes, and it eliminates the natural remedies should government fail in its attempt to do science or to foster science. Certainly, the way we would find that out and do something about it would be to discuss the failure of our government with respect to a scientific question. And if you're not allowed to talk about things that contravene the government's current scientific perspective, then that can't be done. So this basically assumes that the government will be right. It is a religious position that they are selling the public.
Exactly. You remember when Facebook's fact-checking arm, PolitiFact, declared you and Robert Malone purveyors of their worst level of unfactiness, liar, liar, pants on fire, for claiming a few things, including that SARS-CoV-2 may have actually leaked from a lab. That earned their liar, liar, pants on fire rating because that was not true then. But it maybe later became a little bit less true or a little bit more true because they rescinded their rating without saying anything about it and said, no, maybe we don't know.
Well, let's just look at what's happened. Now that the Washington Post is able to talk about the probability that this virus emerged from a lab, you and the public are clearly licensed to talk about it, which is basically synonymous with saying that the government has dictated when you can talk about this, which is obviously a violation of the First Amendment.
Right. You're no longer guilty of malinformation if you talk about it, but we will let you know when you are.
Malinformation, terrorism, I should point out.
We haven't gotten there yet, remember? Right? So just one more thing from this page. They offer a rumor control checklist. If you are an organization or a person who wants to go into rumor control mode and fight the good fight with the government against mis, dis, and malinformation, here are some things that they suggest you consider. And if most of your answers are yes, you're probably in a good position to put up one of these rumor control checklists, rumor control sites of your own. Is the narrative around a contentious or disputed topic where information is changing or not widely known? It's a good chance you should probably fact check that if the information is changing. Okay. Are multiple narratives or artifacts converging into a single narrative or conspiracy? Well, look, if there's a lot of stories and we're getting a refinement as to what we think is true, that's a good sign that you should put something up to pre-bunk or what was it? It was like debunk in advance or in advance pre-bunk. They went like pre-bunk.
I can't remember which ones are preposterous jokes and which ones were official proposals. It may be rebunk.
Right. Rebunk? Yeah, no, but they suggested that you should debunk and pre-bunk. And then if the narrative or artifact focuses on upcoming major milestones or events where early fact-checking could proactively disrupt the spread. So major milestones or events, they don't say anything about whether or not those major milestones or events are true, not true, good, bad. And they're like, we know that the government has some idea about what it does and does not want you to be resisting here. But there's nothing in here about what is actually true. Because if there were, then that would pull the rug out from under this plan. So now you would like to come back to...
Yes. The fact of the government being involved in a massive propaganda campaign in which they are going to sell us narratives that contravene the truth and they are going to silence voices that point this out is bad enough. But it becomes 10 times worse when they do so under the guise of preventing a kind of terrorism. And what most people do not understand, and what was not mentioned in these hearings, as far as I know, is the fact that when they say mis, dis, and malinformation are a form of terrorism, they are saying something with absolutely profound legal consequences, or I should probably say extra legal consequences, because of changes that were made to the structure of our laws under the Bush and Obama administrations. When the executive branch, of which the Department of Homeland Security is a part, declares somebody a terrorist, it triggers all kinds of provisions that in the panic after 9/11 we allowed to be installed into law, things that effectively end your constitutional rights. So it is important that people understand we, presumably by their definitions, have been guilty of spreading malinformation in this podcast, because what we're telling you is that your government is now behaving as a rogue state, that it is declaring people terrorists who are doing nothing but speaking the truth.
We don't know that it has done that.
We don't know that it has done it, but the point is they've set out a definition, and the definition involves true things that cause distrust. And this is something that should cause you to distrust your government. It's also true. So the point is, by using that term, they're not just saying malinformation is bad. They are saying malinformation meets a technical standard that then causes you to lose your rights. And the most important thing about this is it's not that there is no obligation that they tell you that you have triggered this provision in the law. You do not have the right to challenge it in a court. You do not even know that it has happened. And so we are talking about a level of tyranny well beyond propaganda and censorship, and that is something that should truly alarm us. So I really hope that we will start to understand their private language, right? The executive branch has powers that they are not supposed to have, that have not been tested by a court, and those powers have everything to say about our information environment, what we are allowed to discover, who we are allowed to listen to. And it could not be a more frightening turn of events. I'm glad that we are finally having a conversation at the level of congressional hearings in which we're talking about malinformation, but let's not underrate the danger of that provision.